Imagine for a second that you are growing up with two completely different father figures.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. So you have these two guys who are just massive presences in your life, but they hold like entirely opposite mindsets when it comes to navigating the world.
Yeah, it's a tough dynamic.
It really is. One of them is constantly sighing, looking at the bills on the kitchen table and just saying, I'll never be rich. And spoiler alert, his prophecy comes completely true.
Right, self-fulfilling.
Exactly. But
Okay.
the other one, he could be literally on the brink of bankruptcy, just totally strapped for cash, and he will look you in the eye and insist, I am a rich man. Poverty is permanent, but bankruptcy is only temporary.
Wow. It is such a striking contrast. And what's fascinating here is that it really highlights how binary our internal narratives can be.
Yeah, totally.
Like one looks at a lack of money and sees a permanent identity, right? While the other just sees this temporary logistical problem.
Right, and it goes even deeper than that. One says money isn't important, while the other says money is power. So welcome to today's deep dive, where we are on a mission to unpack this really fascinating stack of notes on, well, financial psychology, mindset, and wealth building.
It's a great topic.
We're looking past the standard, skip your morning coffee advice and trying to figure out how our internal thoughts and hidden fears literally dictate our financial reality and how you can rewrite that script.
And the overarching philosophy here, it doesn't start with spreadsheets or, compound interest calculators or stock portfolios. It starts entirely with the mind.
The mindset is everything.
It really is. The fundamental premise is that the words we say to ourselves, especially those throwaway comments we make when we're like super stressed out about bills, they literally construct the boundaries of what we can achieve.
Yeah.
You're basically building your financial cage with your own vocabulary.
Man, that is heavy. Let's test that idea, though, because if thoughts shape our lives that powerfully, we have to look at the mechanics of how we react when life gets difficult. Right.
Right, absolutely.
There's a reference in these notes to that famous Robert Frost poem, The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood.
Taking the path less traveled makes all the difference.
Yes. But the catch is, it requires an immense amount of courage. So why is the road to financial independence so terrifying for people who are otherwise, smart and capable?
Well, the metaphor used to explain this is that life doesn't usually sit down and have a polite, rational conversation with you.
Right.
Instead, life pushes you. It pokes you.
Like a flat tire on a Tuesday morning.
Exactly. A flat tire, surprise medical bill, a rent increase. Every single time you get poked, it's actually a feedback mechanism. It's life saying, hey, wake up. There's a structural flaw in how you are operating, and there's something for you to learn here.
But the natural human response isn't to look for a lesson. I mean, when you get a surprise $1,000 bill, you don't sit there and think, oh, what a beautiful learning opportunity.
Yeah, no one does that.
You panic.
Exactly. You panic. And that biological fear response is where the divergence happens. Because if you haven't built up your internal resilience, you just surrender every time life pushes you around. You play it completely safe.
Just hunker down.
Right. You seek the perceived security of a steady paycheck, and you avoid any unconventional moves. You end up spending your whole life basically saving your energy for some major dramatic life event that never actually happens.
Wow.
And the tragedy is that you ultimately arrive at the end of your life bored and unfulfilled, all because you were absolutely terrified of taking risks. People want to win, but they are so afraid of losing that they won't even step onto the field.
Okay, I want to push back on that a little bit, though. Is it really just fear? Because it feels like a lot of people are just, I don't know, incredibly comfortable. Are we saying people aren't inherently lazy, but rather secretly terrified, and they're using comfort as a shield?
That's exactly it. It's a psychological duality. Think of it as a battle within the soul.
A battle within the soul, okay.
Yeah, we all have this weak, comfort-seeking part of our soul that can easily be bought. It can be bought with a new TV, a slightly bigger salary, or, a really comfortable couch.
Guilty.
Right. But we also have this fierce, resolute part of our soul that absolutely cannot be bought. The part that craves true freedom and independence. And the real struggle of human existence, especially regarding our finances, is which part of your soul wins out when the pressure is applied.
The battle of the soul, that really frames the everyday grind in a much heavier light. I mean, it perfectly explains why so many people get trapped in a cycle driven by sheer anxiety.
Oh, the anxiety is the driver, for sure.
Millions of people are lying awake at night just staring at the ceiling, absolutely terrified of not being able to pay their obligations. And they let this terror drive them out of bed the next morning, force them into a commute, hoping that the next paycheck is going to finally soothe the fear.
But here is the structural flaw in that approach.
hmm
The paycheck doesn't kill the fear. It only delays it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like taking a painkiller for a broken leg.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. The paycheck temporarily numbs the anxiety. You feel okay on a Friday night after direct deposit hits, but the bone is still broken.
Yeah, the systemic issue hasn't been fixed at all.
Exactly. The systemic issue of relying entirely on your own labor hasn't changed. So the fear comes right back the very next morning. It's an endless, exhausting loop. The sources describe people acting like a small hamster in a cage, just mindlessly reacting to their emotions instead of utilizing their intellect.
And this is where we really have to separate emotion from logic. I mean, emotions are vital. The word itself implies energy and motion. They give us the energy to act.
Sure.
But the trick is to stop allowing the emotion to dictate the actual strategy. Instead of rushing out the door in a blind panic because the rent is due, you have to actively choose your thoughts.
But let's ground this for a second, because if you're listening to this deep dive on your morning commute right now and rent is due next week, you can't just quit your job today and go meditate on a mountain. You have to react to the immediate threat.
Of course, you do have to pay your rent. But you also have to carve out the mental space to ask a very difficult strategic question, which is working harder at this specific job really the best way to solve the problem of not having enough money?
That's a tough question to face.
It is. But thinking like, actual critical systemic thinking is what frees you. A tactical reaction solves the problem for 30 days. Strategic thinking solves it for a lifetime.
Which means we need a completely new definition of what the end goal even is. We have to redefine wealth entirely. There's a concept brought up in the notes from Buckminster Fuller that just totally shifts the paradigm.
Oh, I love his definition.
It's so good. Wealth isn't a dollar amount. It's not having a specific arbitrary number in your checking account. It is a measure of time.
It's a brilliant metric. True wealth is simply how many days you could survive forward if you stopped working today while maintaining your current standard of living.
That exposes a massive flaw in how we traditionally view net worth, doesn't it?
Oh, completely.
We see people touting a high net worth, but it often includes a bunch of non-cash producing equity, like a giant house, a couple of expensive cars sitting in the garage, a boat. You might look rich on paper, but none of that stuff is buying you time. In fact, it's usually costing you time because you have to work to maintain it.
Exactly. And for an audience that already understands the basic difference between an asset and a liability, knowing that an asset puts money in your pocket and a liability takes it out, the deeper question is why? Why do so many highly educated, intelligent people consistently buy liabilities while fully believing they are buying assets?
So basically, if my car or my dream house is just draining my bank account every single month with mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, and roof repairs, it is fundamentally a liability. It's not the asset I thought it was. Real wealth has to be an engine that runs on its own.
Right. If you analyze a person's personal financial statement, the numbers don't just show math, they tell a narrative. They reveal the storyline of where a person's energy is flowing.
And what's the story for most people?
For about 80% of families, that story is simply working hard to survive. Money comes in through the income column, and it immediately goes right out the expense column to pay for liabilities. If you spend your entire life acquiring things that require your constant labor to maintain, all those early mornings driven by fear amount to absolutely nothing. You haven't bought yourself a single extra day of freedom.
Ouch. So once we pivot and realize that true wealth is measured in time and cash-flowing assets, we are forced to look at how we spend our productive hours. And this brings us to the crucial distinction between a job and a business. There's an acronym mentioned in the notes for JOB.
Just overbroke.
Just over broke. It's harsh, but true.
It's a really provocative way to phrase it, but it highlights a massive systemic blind spot. Our education system is largely designed to prepare people to be excellent employees.
Right. Sit still, follow directions.
Exactly. It focuses their entire worldview on the income column. The script is, get good grades, get a safe job, earn a high salary. But it almost entirely neglects teaching how to control the power of the money once it's actually earned.
And there's a fascinating psychological distinction made between a profession and a business. Like, if I ask someone at a dinner party, hey, what's your business? They might proudly say, oh, I'm a banker or I'm a mechanic.
But they don't own the bank.
Exactly. They don't own the bank or the garage. They just work there. That is their profession. A true business means acquiring and growing your own assets. Your profession pays your bills, but your business is what buys your freedom.
And to successfully build that business, that asset column, you need a specific framework. This philosophy outlines 4 pillars of financial intelligence. First is accounting.
And this isn't just like balancing a checkbook, right?
No,
Yeah.
well beyond that. It's the ability to read the numbers to understand the true story of a business. It's deep financial literacy.
Because if you can't read a profit and loss statement, you're essentially trying to play a game without knowing the score.
Exactly right. Now, the second pillar is investing, which is the actual science of making money. It's understanding capital allocation, ROI, and compound growth.
Okay, got it.
Third is understanding markets. This is the behavioral side, grasping the science of supply and demand, and reading market sentiment, like what do people actually need right now and where is the capital flowing?
And the fourth is the law, which I think is where most middle-class earners completely check out.
Oh, absolutely. They glaze over.
We view the tax code as a penalty system, right?
Yeah.
But the wealthy view it as a rule book for incentives. Understanding tax rules and corporate structures allows you to play the game legally and actually keep the capital you generate.
Right. And when you combine those 4 pillars, you develop the 3 critical skills of an investor. First, finding missed opportunities that the general public walks right past. Second, raising capital, which often means using other people's money. And third, organizing smart people to execute the vision.
Okay, let's contextualize this for you listening. We aren't saying you should march into your boss's office and quit your day job tomorrow.
Please don't do that.
Right, you can be a dedicated, highly paid employee, but you need to undergo a massive perspective shift. You have to view every single dollar that enters your asset column as a tiny employee.
A tiny employee that works for you 24/7.
Yes. They never sleep, they never ask for a vacation, they don't need HR mediation, and you can pass them on to your kids.
It really is a stark choice. You can either work incredibly hard, pay up to 50% of your earned income in taxes, and try to save whatever meager leftovers remain in a bank account, earning barely enough interest to beat inflation, which, by the way, will also be taxed.
Ah, depressing.
Right. Or you can develop your financial intelligence across those 4 pillars we just talked about and let your brain and those tiny asset employees do the heavy lifting.
But wait, if acquiring assets and building this financial intelligence is technically simple, and we know it doesn't require a PhD in economics, why do so many smart, highly capable people stay completely broke or stuck in the rat race? The explanation in the sources gets into some deep behavioral psychology. It points directly to doubt, cowardice, and a very unexpected form of laziness.
Yeah, they refer to this behavioral phenomenon as the Texas mentality.
I found this concept hilarious, but also just deeply true.
The idea is that Texans are incredibly proud when they win, but they also brag when they lose.
Go big or go home.
Exactly. If a true Texan is going to go broke, they're going to go bankrupt over something massive like a wildcat oil well or a huge real estate development, not over a tiny little duplex. The underlying principle is really about our relationship with the fear of failure.
There's a great quote in here from former NFL quarterback Fran Tarkenton. He said, "Winning means being unafraid to lose. Losers are utterly defeated by failure. It breaks their spirit. But winners are inspired by it. They use the failure as a data point. It's feedback, not a final verdict."
Yeah, the notes use a really great proverb for this too. Everyone wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die.
Oh man, that is the ultimate analogy for wealth building. Everyone wants the reward of financial freedom, but they are absolutely terrified of losing money.
They don't want to experience the quote-unquote death of a failed investment. Unfounded fear and doubt just completely paralyze them. So they sit on the sidelines analyzing what-ifs until the opportunity completely passes them by.
But the winners aren't just blindly throwing money at walls either. The distinction is that cowards let fear blind them with criticism, while winners open their eyes through analysis. If you want to move forward, you have to be willing to lose your balance temporarily. Think about taking a physical step when you walk for a fraction of a second. You are entirely off balance.
You have to embrace that momentary instability to move forward.
Exactly.
And, that avoidance of instability leads us to the most insidious trap of all, which is busyness.
Okay, wait. This is the part that is going to genuinely trigger some listeners. The claim here is that being constantly busy, swamped with work, driving the kids to a million activities, playing golf, keeping up with social obligations is actually the most common form of laziness.
It sounds totally contradictory at first, but psychologically, it's an avoidance tactic. It is active procrastination.
I see people doing this all the time. It makes so much sense. I mean, it's socially acceptable to say, oh, I'm just too swamped with work and the kids to look at my investments. It feels noble almost.
Yeah, you get sympathy for it.
Right. But really, it's so much easier to use that as an excuse than to sit down in a quiet room, look at your bank statements, and face the horrifying reality that you are running on a financial hamster wheel and getting absolutely nowhere.
And if you confront a perpetually busy person with this truth, they almost always get incredibly angry and defensive.
Because they know it's true.
Exactly. The anger stems from cognitive dissonance. Deep down, they know it. They're using their packed calendar to mask their fear of addressing their financial health. Ultimately, you just have to break through that ego defense. You're going to be criticized no matter what you do.
That's for sure.
If you stay broke, society criticizes you. If you aggressively try to build wealth, society criticizes you for being greedy. So you might as well just analyze the situation, ignore the noise, and take the step.
So we've diagnosed the psychological disease. We know we need to stop using busyness as an excuse, step off the hamster wheel, and start acting like analysts rather than critics. But what are the actual mechanics of breaking out? How do we awaken that financial talent? There's a 10-step roadmap provided in the text, and I really want to dig into a few of the most powerful ones.
Yeah, these steps require a lot of intentionality. It starts with having a strong purpose, a deeply emotional reason why you are doing this, because a purely logical reason just isn't enough to sustain you through the difficult periods.
You need fire.
Right. Then it's about making conscious daily choices regarding your time and your associations. Choosing your friends carefully is heavily emphasized because mindsets, particularly scarcity mindsets, are highly contagious.
The one that really caught my eye, though, was the focus on fast learning. The argument is that in today's rapidly shifting economy, what you know is almost immediately outdated. So how fast you can learn a new skill, how quickly you can adapt to AI or a new tax code or a new market trend is infinitely more valuable than your current knowledge base.
Adaptability is the ultimate asset now. They also touch on the necessity of paying yourself first and paying your brokers and advisors well.
Oh, right. People try to save money on cheap advice, which ends up costing them millions in bad decisions.
Exactly. Pay for good advice.
Yep. And then
There's a really fascinating approach to consumption, using your assets to buy your luxuries.
this is the delayed gratification mechanism in action. Instead of buying a fancy car with your earned paycheck, which is what the middle class usually does, you take that paycheck, buy an income-producing asset, and then you let the cash flow from that asset pay for the car.
It completely rewires how you consume.
Right. You don't have to live like a monk forever. You just have to change the sequence of how you buy things.
And it requires you to adopt the mindset of a true investor, which means refusing to act like a sheep. You don't blindly follow the herd and buy at the peak of a market just because your neighbor is doing it. You have to have the psychological fortitude to buy when things are unpopular because, as the saying goes, profit is made when you buy, not when you sell.
But out of all these 10 steps, the 10th one is the one that completely flips the script on traditional wealth building. It's the paradox of giving. Teach and you shall receive.
It is such a profound behavioral principle.
Yeah.
It posits that if you want something in life, whether it's money, a contract, a smile, or even just a friendship, you must give that exact thing first.
Wow.
It operates on the law of reciprocity. There's a really poignant quote in the material. God doesn't need to receive, but humans need to give.
Let's break down why that actually works, because if you want to close a big deal, the human instinct is to hoard information and aggressively pursue the client. But this principle says you should go help someone else close their deal instead.
Which feels completely backward.
It feels almost like magic, but think about what it does to your brain. It completely rewires that scarcity mindset we talked about at the beginning. You can't be terrified of losing if you're actively giving away value.
Exactly. People who are perpetually struggling financially are often neither good students nor good teachers. They are completely closed off in both directions, hoarding what little they have. Approaching the world with a give-first mentality forces you to step out of fear and into abundance.
It's proof to yourself.
Right. By giving, you are subconsciously proving to your own brain that you have enough, which means you control your money rather than your money controlling you. It drastically reduces the psychological friction of wealth building.
That completely changes the game. All right, let's synthesize the journey we've taken today. We started with the immense power of our own internal narratives, the two fathers defining their realities through their words. We dissected the emotional rat race, realizing that the paycheck is just a temporary painkiller for the deeper disease of financial fear.
We redefined wealth as a measure of time, not dollars.
Yes, and learned that true business is about acquiring tiny, tireless asset employees. We confronted the very uncomfortable truth that busyness is often just a socially acceptable form of laziness, a way to avoid looking at our financial reality. And finally, we discovered that breaking free requires leaning into the paradox of giving.
It's a complete transformation, going from being a passive victim of life's pokes to becoming an active architect of your financial landscape. And to that end, I want to leave you, the listener, with a challenge based on this philosophy.
Let's hear it. Think critically about your own daily routine this week. What is one specific, uncomfortable truth about your finances or your career trajectory that you are currently using busyness to avoid facing? What is the reality you are claiming to be too swamped to look at? And more importantly, leaning into that paradox of abundance. What is the very first thing you are going to give tomorrow to start breaking your own cycle of fear?
Man, that is powerful. The cage door is actually wide open. You just have to decide to walk through it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the road well traveled, keep analyzing instead of criticizing, and stay curious. See you next time.